So you will do the activity.
Then we
Benno is here. Okay.
So I think, yeah, maybe we just test the sound with the. Hello, Benno, welcome. Can we just
All
test?
right.
Hi, Benno.
Can you hear me well?
Yes,
Yes.
we hear you and we see you well.
That's
So
great.
it's already 46 past 12 Geneva time. May I suggest we launch the event? Sorry, let me just. Should we start like that? Because we only have 1 hour. I'm looking here. Looking at.
Rachid is also here.
Okay, great. So let's just sound. So thank you for who is already here with us on time. Let us just test the sound and the camera of our additional speaker. How are you? Welcome, Hakibil. Can we test the sound?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, very well.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. So
is Susan also there?
we will, yes, Susan, we already tested before. We'll just kindly ask our panelists to mute themselves and to unmute when we give them the floor for who is online. And we can now officially.
I don't know how I mute. I can't see any button for muting.
Normally at the bottom you have a button where you can click.
But no, we can hear Benno. It's fine.
Yeah.
No, but
yes, but I would like to mute myself and I cannot.
Yes.
I know. Let me just
normally
see.
the same button serves as mute and unmute, and it's at the bottom.
Okay, I can mute myself now.
Very good. Thank you very much. So we are now officially launching this event. Maybe one of you can also close the door here slightly. Hello, welcome. Please come in. Join us. So we have people coming in person here at the Environmental House in Geneva. And we were just now officially launching this event. Welcome. Excellencies, dear colleagues, good afternoon to who is with us at the International Environment House here in Geneva, and good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to who is with us on WebEx or is now watching the video of the event. We have the pleasure to welcome you today for a Ciné Environment House, which are 3 screenings of films highlighting environmental crises or successes of restoration examples, organized here at the Environment House. These screenings are all for educational purposes, non-profit and non-commercial. We had a lot of those screenings before the pandemic started. Then during the pandemic, we had a lot of
I can't hear anything anymore.
Can't hear anything.
Okay, so it was just a few. So you missed us for 5 seconds. I was just mentioning what Ciné Environmental House was, and that we are delighted to be again back with in-person sessions. Today we will be screening and discussing Chaos in the Climate of the Sundarbans, a short moving picture demonstrating some early findings of the study for mapping the degradation of the Sundarbans ecosystems in the last 3 decades, which was premiered here in Geneva at the International Ecology Congress that took place at the end of August. And that's where we had the pleasure to first meet Amitabh Sarkar, who was just arriving to set here in Geneva at the Graduate Institute. And this afternoon, we are delighted to have with us various leading experts who will present the film and discuss the challenges in the Sundarbans. We have with us Amitabh Sarkar, who I already mentioned, who is a Swiss Government Excellence Fellow at the Global Health Center of the Graduate Institute. We have also leading experts who are joining us online. Two are based in Bangladesh and one is based in India, as you will hear. And I propose that I introduce them as I give them the floor. So I'm turning to my left to Amitabh to ask him to introduce us the film that we are going to watch. Very short. Yeah, the camera is in front of you.
Okay.
The film that we are going to watch now.
Thanks, Diana. Well, I begin this opening observation by offering my profound gratitude and thanks to Diana, Harvey, and other friends of the Geneva Environmental Network of UNEP for facilitating this. The Sundarbans Medicine, this pilot study which we have been doing under the aegis of UNESCO in collaboration with UNESCO. So this is a study what we thought that as the world is facing the wrath of climate change almost now more than a decade, as well as the current COVID-19 pandemic, yet to end the pandemic. So in this this crisis times, I mean, what to come up with, what new dimensions that can actually interlink with health, environment, and development in one thread. So that is what we are trying to explore. Before we move to this moving picture, I coined the term from Mrinal Sen, a city I belong to, Calcutta in India. He's a famous director, and he used to say that our real life dynamics are actually moving pictures, so pictures in movement. So that's teleology in that way. The concept here actually we are trying to explore how One Health can be a solution to restore as well as conserve the very strategic as well as engendered ecosystems like the Sundarbans. It's a world's largest mangrove forest, as well as it's very much a climate sensitive place in the earth. So 2015, actually, WHO, UNEP, and the Conservation on Biological Diversity, they came up with first on the biodiversity and human health linkages. Thereafter, series of policy events are happening, especially in the International Geneva and some other places, where actually, say the Berlin Declaration in 2019 on One Health. So all this series of dialogues on One Health, the policy dialogues mostly, which is actually which has some made profound effects, especially in terms of study uptakes and design researches. So here I just give it to Diana for the picture, and then we can come back. So here the one point is that I would like to mention from our preliminary findings is that so far the One Health is a very much in place in research to address the problems of AMR, antimicrobial resistance, zoonotic diseases, pathogen crossover, of course, neglected tropical diseases, as well as vector-borne diseases. Interestingly, the recent joint action plan by the quadripartite organizations, UNEP, my colleagues are sitting behind me, WHO, FAO, and WOW, they came up with this joint action plan on One Health. It will be for till 2026. So there I quote that document, page number 11. It is saying that One Health is so far how to address the environment problem. This is still a gray area for One Health. And this is actually, we began our study last August. So this is actually what we are looking at. So it's not only the disease dimensions of One Health, there is a very immense understanding of environment, the ecology, the sustainability, and how One Health can complete this framework, this triad of human, animal, and ecosystem services. This is all about the study. I now give it to Diana.
Yeah, please. Now I think it's time to watch the short film, and then we can continue the discussion. I'm looking at the team so that you can all watch the film online.
Heritage at the crossroads. Chaos in the climate of Sundarbans. The Sundarbans, located at the edge of West Bengal in India and Bangladesh and spreading over 9,630 square kilometers, is the largest mangrove forest on earth. The three rivers, Ganga, Brahmaputra and Meghna, and their tributaries flow through this ecological system and create the world's largest delta. A vast part of the Sundarbans is already designated as wetlands of international importance under the Ramsar Convention, whereas the Indian side of it has been a UNESCO World Heritage Site since 1987. The Sundarbans Delta is famous for its rich biodiversity. Here, the mangroves, a tropical plant, grow as the land meets the sea. They are noticed for their adaptable characteristics like tolerance to salt and breathing roots. This particular mangrove forest is also famous for the great Royal Bengal tiger, apart from Ganga River dolphin, Irrawaddy dolphin, the Indian python, and the estuarine crocodile. It is also home to more than 400 species of resident and migratory birds and various fishes, including the migratory hilsa. Out of 102 islands, 48 islands are home to 4 million humans. They are mostly engaged in fishing, agriculture, and the collection of wood and honey for livelihood. However, the mangroves and their resources also provide additional options of livelihoods for the people of the Sundarbans. This beautiful and diversified mangrove forest is now in the middle of a climate chaos. The rising sea levels are sending off warnings to these delicate ecosystems regularly. The Sundarbans is a flood-prone delta as its average elevation is lower than 1 meter above sea level, so it is volatile to any bulge in the ocean water. The mangroves are also not effective in such a situation. They die if the flood occurs too frequently or lasts too long. Flooding also causes soil erosion in the coastal belt, thus reducing the total land area. The disappearance or shrinking of the land of the Sundarbans is a grave concern for its mixed biodiversity. Loss of human habitable lands would drive people to emigrate, becoming climate refugees. Sea level rise is also a threat for animal habitats. It is estimated if the sea level rises 28 centimeters above the sea levels of the year 2000, then 96% of the Bengal tiger's habitat in Bangladesh would erode away. On the other hand, due to the rise of ocean levels, there is now an unwarranted mix of inundated saline water inside the areas of Sundarbans. It is damaging the ecosystems as salts are increasingly getting accumulated in the soil and thus obstructing plant growth. Similarly, the aquatic life of fresh water is also in trouble as fish and giant prawns are not tolerant to this excessive salinity. This further hampers the availability of water for agricultural irrigation and drinking, especially in the human-habitated islands. The Sundarbans are also the region that experiences major tropical cyclones of the world. For the past 2 decades, these storms have been frequent and also severe in nature. These severe ones threaten the existence of both human and animals, especially in the low elevation islands of the delta. The frequency and severity of cyclones are attributed to the rising sea levels and temperature of the oceans. In the light of the ongoing climate change, it is now a question how these delicate ecosystems, diverse species, human habitats would sustain and for how long. On the map of global climate vulnerability, the Sundarbans Delta needs urgent attention. The uptake of research endeavors is so far extremely low. Our timeline study of Sundarbans landscape using Google Earth Pro software shows 3 important changes in the last 4 decades. They are evident from these 2 GIS pictures. First, the overall greenery in the Sundarban biosphere has been vehemently decreasing from 1991 to 2020. Second, the Sundarban Islands are shrinking heavily because of landslides and soil erosion. In the Indian side of Sundarban Delta, the Geneva Island is now completely washed away in the ocean. Similar incident happened with many such small islands which are not possible to detect through satellite monitoring. Another big island, Bhangaduani, has been thinning heavily since 1991. Considering the island's state in 2020, the Bhangaduani Island may be the next Jingira in near future. Third, The phytoplankton community in water of the Sundarbans are disappearing fast, as shown in the changing greenish color of water between 1991 and 2020 pictures. It has a relationship with thermal expansion and ocean acidification. The contrast between the two pictures show how fast the chaos of climate change is engulfing the Sundarbans. Despite the continuous advocacy of several international bodies, the governance mechanisms, both at national and intergovernmental levels, are inadequate. According to World Heritage Charter, UNESCO has been advocating for several years to establish an ecological monitoring system for the Sundarbans World Heritage Sites in both India and Bangladesh. However, it is still at the proposal level for the respective countries. There is a need for intergovernmental actions and enhanced research activities. The climate chaos of the Sundarbans Delta is real. It is now not only endangering the Delta's ecosystems, but also our heritage.
Perfect. Thank you. For those who want to see the film, because the streaming quality is not always perfect, the film is available on the webpage of the event, so don't hesitate to go back if you want to rewatch it. Maybe Amitabha, before we move to our guests who are online, we'll give you the floor a few more minutes to comment what we just saw.
Camera is fine.
Yes.
Thanks. Sundarban, why Sundarban? Sundarbans is as actually it is a very it's one of the unique places in the world which has 4 different types of ecosystems: terrestrial ecosystems, freshwater ecosystems, agricultural ecosystems, as well as it has coastal and marine ecosystems. So the One Health concept, we'll say the UNESCO is having this Man and Biosphere program. Maybe the IUCN from Kalish from Bangladesh, he will also speak about the nature-based solutions. So all these are actually complementing to this One Health, where we need to first actually, that is what the study is doing. We are first actually identifying the ecosystems, then mapping the ecosystem services, and then this come to the triad, the human, ecosystem services, and animal. So how a human and animal is interacting, at the same time how animal and ecosystems are interacting. So all these different triads, and this is how we are mapping, as well as the socio-ecological micro determinants and the macro determinants are studied. And so this is the approach actually to go for a One Health approach, where ecosystem services, human and animal, can be studied in one framework. Thanks.
Thank you. We heard in the film about the need of intergovernmental action, and so let's start the discussion with the 2 experts from who work both for UNESCO, Beno Bor, who is the head of South Asia Cluster, and Suzanne Weiss, who is the head of the Bangladesh office, who will speak about the importance of conservation and restoration in the Sundarbans. And I will start by giving the floor to Beno. Beno, over to you. Don't forget to unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me well?
Very well.
Yes, yes.
Okay, first let me clarify, I'm not the head of the office. We are expecting a new head of the office of the New Delhi cluster office that serves Bangladesh and India and Nepal, Bhutan, Maldives, and Sri Lanka. I'm the natural science program specialist. So before I start with the presentation, which I have sent you, let me just thank very dearly Amitabha for inviting my colleague, Dr. Sue Weiss, the head of office of the Dhaka office, and myself for this meeting. And also let me thank UNEP and the Geneva Environmental Network for giving us the opportunity to speak here. Amitabha, you mentioned One Health. In UNESCO, we also call that living in harmony with nature, because human health and ecosystem health, animal health, plant health, it goes hand in hand. The third point that I would like to make you all aware of before I start my presentation is that these 9,630 square kilometers of Sundarbans, they are the largest standalone mangrove forest in the world. And these mangroves they can thrive with seawater. They are seawater tolerant, depending on the species. Some of them are tolerant to full-strength seawater, such as Avicennia marina and Rhizophora species and Cereops species and others. Now, we have exceeded 8 billion people on the planet in the year 2022, probably around June, July. We are expecting to have 9.8 billion by 2050 and something between 10.9 to 11.2 billion people by the end of the century. Now, these people, they need resources just like all of us need resources, in particular food and water and air to breathe and all the other resources that we need. Before COVID started in November 2019, there was already about 820 million people in the world struggling on a daily basis to find food. So I believe that it is of the utmost importance to turn to biosaline agriculture and to find out how we can make use of the 2,200 halophytic salt-tolerant plant species that we know that occur on the planet in order to turn them into food. Because with the agricultural systems that we have available now, most of which are dependent on freshwater irrigation, we are already failing. So this is one of the messages that I wanted to bring over to you before I start the presentation. Biosaline agriculture in the future might be of the utmost importance to feed the increasing human world population. Let me now go to my presentation. UNESCO, of course, we are headquartered in Paris in France, Organisation des Nations Unies pour l'Éducation, la Science et la Culture, in French, United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization in English. Those are the two working languages that we have. And it is all about peace. Next slide, please. This is our Director General, Audrey Azoulay, and she is, for the second time, a female Director General after Irina Bokova from Bulgaria. Audrey Azoulay hails from France. We do also support gender equality in everything that we are doing, and that would also apply for our interventions and our contributions for the conservation, scientific research, restoration of the mangroves and the Sundarbans. So United Nations, let us not forget, everything that UN agencies are doing should contribute to peace. So the Constitution of UNESCO declares, since wars begin in the minds of people, it is in the minds of people that the defenses of peace must be constructed. We are doing that on the platforms of education, science, culture, whereas the science is divided into natural, social, and human science, and the C also stands for culture and for communication and information. Next slide, please. The mandate of UNESCO is very broad. We have 5 major programs, education, the largest, I believe, then natural science, the second largest. We also have social and human science, culture, communication, information. Myself, I'm talking for the natural sciences. It's about pursuing scientific cooperation to keep ecosystems and the human life support system intact. Next slide. In the science sector, we have 3 divisions. The Ecology and Earth Science Division, the Hydrological Science Division, and the division that we call PCB, Partnership Capacity Building, which deals with the basic science, biology, chemistry, mathematics, and physics. And of course, in the Sundarbans, of the greatest relevance is probably the ecological sciences together with the social and human sciences, because it's about people and nature conservation. And Amitabha already mentioned that there are also freshwater ecosystems, so we might also mobilize our capacity in the hydrological sciences. Next. In India, we have, or let me just rephrase, the New Delhi office serves the Himalayan countries like Bhutan, Nepal, and northern India, but we also serve Bangladesh and Sri Lanka and India as a whole and the Maldives. In India, we have 12 UNESCO biosphere reserves. Biosphere reserves are places to apply, test, and demonstrate best practices for human living in harmony with nature. The biosphere reserve aim to enhance nature conservation, reduce the environmental footprint, carbon footprint, pollution footprint, and keep the ecological carrying capacity of our natural ecosystems intact. Since you are here from the Geneva Environmental Network, you probably know that we are already collectively behaving as if we have 2.5 planets available according to the resources exploitation that we have. Next one. In Bangladesh, for the time being, there are no biosphere reserves, and one of the reasons why I am planning to visit Bangladesh between the 4th and the 10th of February, so very soon, is to advocate for biosphere reserve development in Bangladesh with a special view to the Sundarbans. In India, the Sundarbans are, as we heard before, a biosphere reserve and a World Heritage Site. In Bangladesh, they are only a World Heritage Site. That in itself, of course, is an achievement. It's not easy to develop a World Natural Heritage Site. But natural heritage sites and Ramsar sites and biosphere reserves, they do have different management plans. The biosphere reserve management plans considers the togetherness, the interactivity, the socio-ecology between people and nature. Sue will shed a little bit light on the challenges in her presentation, and then you will probably understand better the biosphere reserve concept. So I would very, very much hope to discuss with the authorities of Bangladesh whether they would not like to try and establish the Sundarbans on the Bangladeshi side, also as a biosphere reserve, which would then also open floors for the academic and governmental and educational cooperation between India and Bangladesh. But it would also open doors for international cooperation. The World Network of Biosphere Reserves consists of, I believe, 736 sites in the world, with more than 130 countries participating. So if Bangladesh would participate, they could also count on the information flow and the experiences that might be helpful from other countries. Next one, please. Next slide, please. So in India, there are 2 biosphere reserves that I selected for this presentation of relevance for mangroves. One is the Gulf of Mannar in the south of east of India, between southeast India and Sri Lanka. It is a coastal and marine biosphere reserve in Tamil Nadu with coral reefs, seagrass beds, and mangroves, and is considered one of the world's richest marine ecosystems. What you see here is the dugong, one of the 2 remaining sea cow species that we have in the world. The Steller sea cow has been globally extinct, but we still have the manatee available in the Americas, and the dugong here, which occurs between the Persian Gulf, the Red Sea, the Gulf of Oman, Pakistan, India, Philippines, Papua New Guinea, and Australia. And it depends very much on macroalgal reefs and seagrass beds. So also in the Sundarbans, it's not only about mangroves, it's also about other high productivity ecosystems, such as seagrass beds, of course, and perhaps there are also salt marshes on the landward fringes of the mangroves. Next one. Here you can see an aerial view of the Sundarbans, which was established as a biosphere reserve in India in 2001 in West Bengal. And as we heard before, it's the largest delta in the world, and it hosts the largest standalone mangrove forest globally. That does not mean, however, that India or Bangladesh have the largest mangrove coverage globally. The mangrove coverage in Indonesia is the largest per country, with almost 32,000 square kilometers. And Brazil and Mexico also have significantly larger mangrove systems, and even Myanmar. And by the way, in the film, we saw the satellite imagery of the Sundarbans. I believe that you might wish to recheck the country coverage there, because I think you've got the borders of Myanmar not right, and that might cause some concern. Next slide, please. Yeah. What do we do in UNESCO for the conservation, restoration, and scientific research into mangrove ecosystems in the world? We have, for example, established during the COVID lockdown, when we all could not meet with each other. We could only meet like we are doing it now, but we could not meet in person anymore. So we established a special website for mangrove ecosystems called questforaction.org/mangrove. You are all invited to visit that. You are also all invited to study it a little bit, and perhaps if you wish, you can also provide a blog contribution. So we had a Mekong Mangrove Forum taking place 3 times. The first time 2019 in Vietnam with a field excursion to the Kat Ba Biosphere Reserve, in 2020 in Myanmar to the Miek Archipelago, which we hoped it would be established as a biosphere reserve. Myanmar has 5,000 square kilometers of mangroves in its coastlines. And then we had an online forum in 2020. I just came back from Yokohama in Japan, where we established, we widened the approach from a mangrove forum to a blue carbon forum, because these blue carbon ecosystems are those ecosystems like mangroves and seagrass beds and salt marshes and some other ecosystems which are storing large amounts of atmospheric and oceanic carbon, not only in the biomass, but in the semi-subhydric soils, which are waterlogged during high tides, which plays, of course, a tremendous role for carbon sequestration and as a carbon sink. So please visit that website. Next slide, please.
Benno, if you could accelerate, because we have 2 other speakers, and we had.
Okay, I will speed up a little. I did not know how much time I have. We have also produced climate science literacy posters in a language that can be understood for the general public. It's already available in English, Spanish, Thai, German, and 7 of the most widely spoken Indian languages. When I come to Bangladesh next week, I hope that I can speak with the Bangladeshi friends and colleagues also about developing this in Bengali. Next slide. We have at UNESCO also established a feasibility study and an experimental plot to test the ability of mangroves to be produced when they are floating. You can see here a boat jetty with mangroves on them. They are not being irrigated. They have a semi-permeable membrane underneath, and they only take in the seawater from underneath, and they are thriving. They are producing biomass and seeds and flowers and everything like a normal mangrove, which could be of great help to produce an environmentally friendly biofuel on top of the oceans. Next one. One of our recent products is a poster series of the mangrove ecosystems in the world, consisting of 125 posters for 125 countries. Believe it or not, it's 125 countries that have mangrove ecosystems. India has 4,300 square kilometers. Next one, please. This is the second poster that we have for India, exceptionally because the country is so large, and we did not just want to have the previous poster with habitat infringement. We also wanted to have a positive poster to it. Next one is for Bangladesh, please. In Bangladesh, as you can see, we have 4,950 square kilometers of mangroves. And yeah, I hope that we will jointly be able to advocate for biosphere reserve establishment. I don't know if the presentation has another slide or if this is the last one.
It's the last one.
Okay, so it's about biosphere reserves, it's about floating mangroves, and but we also have the concept of World Heritage Sites in the coast and also geoparks. And I'd be very happy later, if time allows, to answer to your questions.
Thank you very much, Benno. Thank you very much. We have also with us Suzanne V, who is the officer in charge of the UNESCO Dhaka office. Suzanne, the floor is yours.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you very much for introducing this with the film, because I think that beautifully set the scene so that we all know the lovely area that we're talking about. So I wanted to focus a little bit on Bangladesh because I actually don't know much about the Indian side, and I'm also going to focus a little bit more on some of the key conservation steps and also the ecological monitoring that has been put in place so far. So next slide, please. So I've created a little bit of a timeline, and it's quite an interesting forest because as forests go, some of the management moves that were made here are really early in terms of even global context. The first mapping of the Sundarbans was actually done in 1764, which is very early, right when forest science and forestry were at their very early stages. And you can see from this that already by 1875-76 that they created a forest reserve. And the first management plan was done in 1878. Now, to be fair, this management plan was largely how to harvest wood as opposed to how to conserve and have an integrated approach. But as we move forward on the top part, the red boxes are for Bangladesh, and the green, no, sorry, the other way around. The green boxes are Bangladesh and the red boxes are India. So you can see that gradually since the 1970s, there has been a lot more emphasis on looking at more than harvesting wood. And you can see that the environmental or the level of protections and management have gradually increased. From 1973, when there was a first strong step of establishing a tiger reserve in India, which led to the Sundarbans National Park in 1984, and a little bit later in Bangladesh, where the first sanctuary was in 1977. You can also see on this that both the Ramsar site inscriptions and the World Heritage sites were not done as a single unit. They were done as separate listings, separate nomination process. And I think that this is actually one of the critical issues in terms of the ongoing management because of this separation of the management systems. There is a Bangladesh-India Sundarban Forum that is meant to regularly meet and discuss the cross-border cooperation and collaboration, but it hasn't met since before the pandemic. And I believe the pandemic was one of the reasons why, but there still hasn't been any meeting in the last 12 months or so. And this means that the ecological monitoring, the management plans, and all of these things are quite different systems. And what I understand is the management system on the Indian side is very different from the management system on the Bangladesh side. So when you're looking at a species that doesn't respect geographic boundaries like that, they are having very different ecological situations when they cross from one side to the other. And this actually is a risk factor for things like tiger conservation, for example. And if you go below the line, looking at the monitoring that's been established, So the grey boxes show you how the management planning on the Bangladesh side is going. So since 1998, they've had much stronger and more strategic management planning, moving in 2010 to integrated management plans. So this was the first integrated plan, and they're still in the process of finalising the integrated resource management plan for 2021 to 2030. But above that, you can see 3 different key monitorings that I've put some dates in there. So Tiger survey was done in 2004. It has been done between 2004 and 2018. I didn't put up all of the dates. And the 2022 survey was started. I'm not sure if it was completed or not. And the 2018, 2022 surveys were camera tracking surveys. So the 2022, it will be the first full survey that has been done for quite some time. And so the data from this is actually very critical to know exactly what's happening with tiger populations. The dolphin census, there's been, the dolphin census started in 2006 and the most recent one was 2018. The data from the dolphin census is showing a significant decline in dolphin populations. So this is actually a risk factor. The hydrological monitoring, I only could find 2 periods of hydrological monitoring, but I believe there might have been one more recently started. I don't know if it's finished. And this is also important because I think we heard in the film quite a lot about some of the hydrological changes that have been experienced. And I have put on there, in the earliest mapping that was done of the Sundarbans, the area was 16,700 kilometres. And today, the figure I got, 9,630. Over the last 20 years, that's been relatively stable in terms of forest cover, but that actually does mask the decline in forest quality. So the shrinkage over the last 20 years hasn't been that great, but the actual impact on the quality of the forest cover is there. Another thing I would just like to say that when we're talking about the Sundarbans, some of the documents are a little bit unclear because, for example, on the Bangladesh side, around 2/3 of the mangrove forest of the Sundarbans is in the World Heritage Site and the rest of it is outside. So the management plans and a lot of the other monitoring only applies to the areas that are within the World Heritage Site. So that means we're not monitoring the whole of the Sundarbans as an ecosystem. And even within Bangladesh, we're only monitoring those sites under the conservation areas for the majority of things. There is a National Forest Survey ongoing, which started last year, which will be looking at forest coverage for the whole country. And I think that will be quite interesting in terms of looking at the total forest cover and how that. Next slide, please. So you can see from these land cover maps from 1980 to 2020, and I also think something similar was shown in the video, that the overall forest area hasn't changed that much. In fact, in some years with the mapping, it increased slightly, but overall it has decreased a bit. But I just wanted to mention a little bit some of the other ongoing management activities. So I already covered the management plans on the previous slide, but also both state parties, India and Bangladesh, are required to submit an annual report to the World Heritage Centre. Those reports are all available online on the World Heritage Centre's website for anybody who would like to look at them. And if there are any major issues, the state party is also required to submit a report on those, and you can also see those reports on the website if you would like to look into it. So the ecological monitoring that is already occurring is the land cover change, the hydrology, tiger surveys, the dolphin census, national forest mappings. And what is not covered in the ecological monitoring, and Benno kind of pointed it out, but I didn't get a chance to put it in my slide, because this is not part of the World Heritage monitoring, is the population. And the fact that on the Bangladesh side, there is no population living within the World Heritage, and not really monitoring very well how the population growth is in those areas of the forest that is outside the World Heritage Site. So how the population growth and the land use and agricultural use impacts on the ecology of the ecosystem is not necessarily being picked up by a lot of these monitoring systems. And you will know that Bangladesh is one of the most densely populated countries in the world. There's a very high population living in this area on the Bangladesh side coast. And that population has still been increasing. It's also a population that has a high level of poverty. Even within Bangladesh, it's one of the poor zones. And so the dependence on the forests and the continued potential to encroach on the forest, poaching, forest product harvesting, and those are real threats to the system. So some of the other measures that are in place, SMART is the name of the system that has been developed with the support of GIZ. And this is an ongoing monitoring and controlling system. It is both looking at how we can use a community forest development partnership, where they're training and engaging community members to do forest patrols and monitor, but also report and submit input so that they can get a better picture on what is actually happening. They also use drones and aerial photography, satellite images, etc. So it integrates the technological part with the community engagement and involvement in ownership of the forest. There's also a joint forest fisheries department monitoring unit, and this is another issue on the Bangladesh side. Forests is responsible up until the high tide mark, and fisheries is responsible for the other side. And the forest department is the manager of the World Heritage Site, but the fisheries department doesn't have an official role in managing the World Heritage Site, even though it is a marine World Heritage Site as well as a land World Heritage Site. So GIZ has also supported the establishment of this joint monitoring unit. This is relatively new and it's finding its teeth, I guess, but I think that this is a big step forward in trying to actually tackle some of these problems together. So this is it from me. That's basically what I wanted to cover, and I hope that gives you a better idea about the challenges. Sorry, let's go back to the challenges. I think I mentioned most of them already, or they've been covered. But some of the things that I didn't mention, I'll just go into here. Pollution is a huge problem across Bangladesh, and the pollution includes quite a lot of water pollution from the shipping and things in the area. The boat traffic is both the industrial shipping, but I was told last week that there's about 600 tourist boats in the Sundarbans side, which is an enormous volume. Those boats are not really under a lot of regulation or management, so there's that. And industrial development, there's a lot of corn and crab farming in the area, so that also has the potential to contribute to pollution issues. Salinity is a huge problem for the populations living there, and fresh water, I think. So I'll leave it at that, and yeah, hopefully that gives you a bit of a snapshot of the Bangladesh side. Also,
thank you very much, Suzanne, for bringing these challenges to the discussion. So let's now move to our next speaker, who is also joining us online from Bangladesh. Hakibil Amin is the country representative of IUCN. Hakibil, the floor is yours.
Thank you. How much time I have, if you can tell
So
me?
according to the instructions that were sent to you, you had all 5 to 7 minutes, but it's true that your predecessors took a lot of time, and we have an additional speaker here, but there was also a lot to say. It's always great to have speakers coming from the field, and in your case, it's not the first time you come to Geneva in person or virtually, so please, the floor is yours.
Okay. No, you have taken 1 minute from my 5 minutes. No, just joking. So I purposefully didn't. I mean, I don't want to use any slides because we're supposed to talk about the movie, and let's keep it as a kind of a storytelling setting. I'll start from where my previous speaker has stopped, like the challenges in the Sundarban that you have mentioned: hydrological salinity, population pressure, industrial growth, and pollution. These are all valid, very, very valid reason. I like the film, Amitabh, congratulations on that. But I also like to say that climate change, we there is very little research on what is the impact of climate change on the Sundarban itself, on the ecological changes, because it's a long term, and it's there are models, we can say possible impact, but the actual what is has happened in the last 10, 15 years and what's going to happen in next 10, 15 years is very difficult to say. So I would say definitely would like to talk about climate change. We definitely would emphasize on the threats of climate change, but we at the same time we should not forget what is the prevailing context that we are working, and those are very, very important to understand, because unless and until we take the current pressure and the drivers, the climate change only exacerbate them. We're gonna have added another pressure. It's not the pressure only. Uh, and in terms of to understand the long term impact, whether it's climate change or is existing drivers, we also need to emphasize that this is a very active delta, and the mangrove ecosystem itself is a dynamic system. It's not static. It's going to change over time. And I mean, there's so much of sediments is coming from the three very large river, Ganges, Brahmaputra, and Meghna, and draining through Bangladesh in the part of which is is a Sundarban, is a huge active delta building process. So it's land accretion happening, erosion happening, but in the process we are, net gainer of land. If you just move from Sundarban to the right, if you go to the Google map, you will find an island, Hatia and Sandip. If you go in the time series data in the Google map, you will see how it has changed over time. So if one island disappears one day, it doesn't mean it's just because of climate change. It's a delta process is moving on that we need to understand. And yes, it's a concern, but we need to get the bigger picture. And I would like to add to Sue's presentation on the management and the data set available. Absolutely, absolutely, she's on spot. But just to add that recently, as part the UNESCO recommendation from the reactive mission, Bangladesh government has developed and strategic environmental assessment, and it proposed a monitoring methods for not for only for Sundarban but entire southwest belt. Uh, when it is, I mean, the structure is there, but when government will start putting data and publishing report, it will give us a much bigger picture of the changes happening outside Sundarban, which is influencing the health and ecology of the Sundarban itself. So, and recently, with the ZIZ funding, we have, with the Forest Department, we have developed a biotic indicator-based ecological monitoring system. We believe this is quite a rigorous monitoring system that we have developed. But again, it needs to be populated, and since ecological monitoring it's quite a expensive, but so that we have designed it so that Forest Department itself, the forest guards and others, can easily take data based on the visuals, like the birds, the tiger. And IUCN has another project called Integrated Tiger Habitat Conservation Program. We are now doing tiger prey population survey. So all this is going to add to the data. All of this, I mean, now coming to the again few points that the topic that you have given me, nature-based solution. I think it's 5 minutes is not enough. So I don't want to bring another theory, because we have talked about one program approach, one health approach. We have talked about biosphere reserve. So, and now I'm talking about nature-based solution. So what we need is a kind of for the larger audience and for the policymakers that who we usually target for our activities, it's a simplification or synergies among all these approaches, because basically we talk about or the end product that we want is more or less same, is the betterment of ecosystem services so that human society is sustained, the environment is right. Uh, uh, but nature-based solution is a little bit different in a way. We are coming from in normal restoration or the conservation work we have been doing is a priority was addressed a driver of loss of species and species habitat, whereas nature-based solution we are prioritizing to resolve pressing societal problems and challenges. And like for example, the restoration or plantation is not necessarily a nature-based solution. It can be a conservation measures. For nature-based solution, it's a development which has a net positive biodiversity outcome. Anyways, we have other forums. We can discuss a lot about it. Just what I want to add, whatever the end of the day in the Sundarban, whether it's called the Biosphere Reserve or on World Heritage side or Ramsar side, what we want to see is the management effectiveness, whether the management is responding to the changes. And I think I'm not. I visited Indian part of Sundarban, but I'm not qualified to comment on that. But I have been working on Bangladesh side of Sundarban. It's a lot has been done, but a lot has to be done as well. But as Sue has mentioned, there are several layers of, I would say, management has been put in place, and our job and IUCN, like UNESCO, IUCN is advisor to UNESCO on the World Heritage issues. So we together try to help the government to bring the best expertise, the best knowledge, so that this universal value of this magnificent ecosystem is contained for the next generation. Over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Hakibil. Let's come back to the One Health approach. We have one more speaker here, who is Wandias Nake, who is a policy and partnership coordinator at the United Nations Environment Program, and one of his focuses is really One Health. We are running out of time, but let's hear from Wandi.
Could you put the...
Yes.
Okay, so I have 3 minutes, so I'm going to go really fast. First, thank you very much. I think it was very educational to listen to many of the presenters, especially colleagues from UNESCO, IUCN. Imagine One Health as this image that you see on the screen. This is the story of One Health, and the same one. So we do have 4 organizations currently working together: the WHO, FAO, the World Organization for Animal Health, and FAO, trying to advance this agenda. What is it? It is an approach, approaching health-related challenges using a multidisciplinary approach. It is a multidisciplinary approach, and it also requires a multidisciplinary team. So this is very fundamental. We have defined what One Health is through what is called the One Health High-Level Expert Panel in 2022 as an integrated approach, optimizing the health of people, animals, and ecosystems. So I will move fast the next one. So what One Health is not, it's not a goal. It is not a technical issue to be addressed by one sector. It's not health in all policies. It is not synonymous to environment and health, but it is linked the environment to human health outcomes mediated by animals. Main focus so far, of course, zoonosis, AMR, food safety, water, air, soil pollution, and food security. We all must ask, what are the main obstacles that member states face in implementing the One Health approach? This is SDG 3D. It's in particular, it is about lack of sufficient advocacy, lack of sufficient clarity on what it is, absence of political will, other priorities, in particular funding, who is going to fund this, and also the sense of it is not our problem. It's some other sector's problem. So the only possible solution for this, thanks to COVID, it has given us a real wake-up call in terms of why we need to coordinate, collaborate, partner with each other, and that is actually the main issue within the One Health approach. So what we have done, building on the global momentum, increased focus on addressing health threat originating in the animal-human environment interface. And within the global structure, we've put in place what is called now they call us the Quadripartite Alliance. It used to be a tripartite between WHO, FAO, and the World Animal Organization, but now UNEP has joined us as one of the key players in this One Health agenda. Of course, the One Health high-level expert panel that was set up and produced an excellent report. There is a One Health leadership group on AMR. And the very latest is actually the One Health joint action plan. And that will be my last slide. This was launched in October. It has 6 specific tracks in terms of what we are driving using the One Health approaches. The first one is strengthening health systems and the One Health approach, reducing emerging or resurfacing zoonosis, epidemic and pandemics, controlling and eliminating endemic, zoonotic, neglected tropical diseases and vector-borne diseases. It is about food safety risk, looking into food safety risk. Antimicrobial resistance, of course, has been discussed in depth here in Geneva and other places. And then what we added actually this time around is how do we ensure that environment is better integrated into One Health. So this is what this action plan, and now we have a guideline that is put in place. Hopefully to be out soon. The full organization have been working on how do we translate the joint action plan into actual implementation at the country level. And then maybe one last caveat is our own initiative. UNEP is leading something called the Nature for Health initiative. This is specifically to look into the environmental dimension. How do we ensure to prevent pandemics and related health risks by strengthening the environmental aspect of One Health. So there are 8 organizations who have joined up in this initiative. Initial funding from the German government, a 50 million euro initial investment. We've now selected 6 countries at the Biodiversity COP in Montreal in December. Ecuador, Ghana, Mongolia, Rwanda, Vietnam, and Zambia are the first 6 countries, but we're hoping that it will be expanded to 50 other countries as we move on. So I'm sorry, this is what I would give you, considering the time that we have. But we see now a very strong link to what UNESCO is doing with the biosphere work that we should really look into it. Yeah, thank you very much. I'm happy to answer any question. But the most important part is environment has become an integral part of the action track as we move forward with the One Health agenda.
And we see here some synergies that can
absolutely
just mention, and also as you are still selecting countries, this region will also be part of this new project that UNEP has launched.
Absolutely.
On Nature for Health.
Yeah.
I know we are running over time, but I'm looking at the room. Are there any comments or that you would like to make? Any questions you would like to ask? I know that some of the speakers need to leave us, but we still have a few others.
Benno is raising a hand.
Yes, Benno and Sue have a meeting. But yes, we have here somebody in the room.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, thank you very much for the seminar. It was really very interesting to listen to everybody. I just want to add one very important point to the One Health scenario that we heard. Of course, it's very important to look into zoonosis and zoonotic diseases. And let us not forget, it is as important to find out where COVID-19 and other pandemics came from. COVID-19, we don't know if it was a zoonotic disease or whether it was a laboratory accident. And I think we all deserve and we want to hear where it came from. Was it a zoonotic disease or was it a laboratory accident? We do not know that. So bio-laboratory accidents need to be added to the list of items under One Health. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have here with us in the room the Deputy Permanent Representative of Bangladesh to the UN in Geneva, who will now speak. So we'll give her the floor.
Thank you very much for giving me the floor. At first, I would like to thank all the presenters for their very thought-provoking presentation. It was very informative and, as Wandi said, very educational. So we have definitely a very strong stake since it is about Sundarban, and we host a large part of Sundarban, a significant part. And this is one of the priorities of the government is to how to preserve its biodiversity and how to protect it from environmental degradation and also from the impacts of climate change. I would just like to say that as the moment we were listed as UNESCO World Heritage, the government has been relentlessly putting its efforts to comply with the conservation methodologies as stipulated in the convention, and also as suggested by the World Heritage Center, World Heritage Committee, and IUCN. So we have been regularly presenting our report, and the last report was sent in 2021. And I would also like to mention that Bangladesh is one of the few developing countries that initiated the strategic environmental assessment process to safeguard its environment. Its environment means Sundarbans environment. And very quickly, just in recent times, especially in the year 2020 and 2021, we took various measures for conservation of the natural ecosystem of outstanding universal value of the Sundarbans. We had undertaken projects such as Sundarbans Shurakha, in English, Sundarbans Conservation Project, development and extension of ecotourism in the Sundarbans, pond excavation and re-excavation for the supplying of fresh drinking water. These measures will enhance the sustainability of forest management of the Sundarbans. And you have already spoken about the MOU between Bangladesh and India. And this is reinforcing the transboundary cooperation, which is really needed to protect Sundarbans. And above all, our government has been actively engaged with the World Heritage Center for the capacity development of the personnel concerned to the conservation of the Sundarbans, and we will continue to do so. With these few words, I would once again like to thank you for organizing this event, and we look forward to working very closely with you in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Excellency. I forgot to mention your name, Shanshita Hake.
Yes.
You are the Deputy Permanent Representative of Bangladesh to the UN here in Geneva. It was very good to have you here with us today. So with that, indeed, yes, Wandi.
Just a quick one. Thank you for our colleague from UNESCO on the issue of biosecurity. In fact, if you get a chance to look at the joint plan of action, specifically track number 2 and track number 3, they have a specific references to the issue of biosecurity. It is considered in the as one of the issues that we need to look into. Yeah.
Thank you, Wandi. Thanks to you, Amitabha, and thanks to the colleagues that join us online today, and to the other colleagues and friends we have here in the room. We were able to speak about the Sundarbans and some of the challenges it's facing, and see also some synergies on some streams, particularly not only those that we have heard that are being addressed by the colleagues in the field, but also on other policy programs that we are running here in Geneva. And there is certainly room to again bring this region in other discussions. Amitabh, anything you would like to add before we close the session? I hope you all enjoyed, for those who don't know this region, that you particularly enjoyed the discussion on this region and the challenges it is facing.
Oh, we are glad actually that so many participants and range of discussion we are having. So the own intention of this piloting actually to promote Sundarban as a knowledge site, future knowledge site, and so that it could be a place for the multilateral actions. So whatever, even the joint action plan or even the it is continuously actually saying that we need further research for research uptake is very necessary. And another, so it's one point. And the second point is that Sundarban is a very, very like geopolitical. So climate wise, it's a very strategic place. So through this, actually, we can show the world, the rest of the world, that biosphere, sustainable way of biosphere management could be a very, very positive sign for overall health of environment, animal, and as well as population. Thanks.
And Wandi, I saw you raise your hand.
Yeah,
so
please,
please
just
go ahead.
finally, as we continue to be confronted by new re-emerging outbreaks and diseases, it is always important to look into what are the drivers of these outbreaks, and looking at primary prevention at source. How do we make sure that we prevent it at the source? This is about land use change. This is about deforestation. This is about encroachment into wildlife habitat. And I think it's so important to look into addressing the root causes of these outbreaks that we're talking about.
Thank you, Wandi. As we are running out of time, we will close the discussion here. But for those who are in person in Geneva, we will continue informally. So thank you all for joining the discussion. The summary of this discussion will be available on the webpage of the event. You will also find a video of the discussion. So if you want to come back on some of what the main points that were presented by the leading experts that join us today. And once more, thank you very much to our panelists and to our attendees, particularly Benno, Suzanne, Hakibil. For you, it's already late in the day. Thank you for you here in Geneva. And of course, thank you to all the attendees, those who join us on WebEx, those who are on the streaming platforms, and those who will later watch this video. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Please share the contact details. I would like to get in touch with Amin and with a number of others that I heard. Thank you very much, colleagues.
Yeah.
We will send. Thank
Forward
you.
to your visit to Dhaka. We'll meet in Dhaka.
Okay. That's great.
Thank you all. I'm just waiting because we need to stop the streaming. Thank you very much for joining us for the organization. It's always a
Thank
pleasure.
you for organizing. It was really,